The Russian Revolution of 1917 swept away centuries of czarist rule, leaving a power vacuum in its wake. From this chaos, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, emerged victorious. They consolidated their power and formally established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, in 1922. Lenin's vision promised a society without class divisions, where workers controlled the means of production. The early years of the Soviet Union were marked by both challenges and triumphs. Lenin's new economic policy, or NEP, in 1921, allowed for limited private enterprise to boost the struggling economy. However, Lenin's death in 1924 left a void in leadership, setting the stage for a power struggle that would shape the Soviet Union's destiny. The 1930s saw Stalin consolidate his grip on power through a series of brutal purges. These purges, aimed at eliminating any perceived threats to his authority, resulted in the deaths of millions of Soviet citizens. Fear and paranoia permeated Soviet society as no one, not even high-ranking party officials, was safe from Stalin's wrath. When World War II erupted in 1939, the Soviet Union initially signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany. However, this pact proved short-lived. In 1941, Hitler broke the agreement, launching a surprise attack on the Soviet Union. Despite early setbacks and heavy losses, the Soviet Union, fueled by patriotism and sheer determination, ultimately repelled the Nazi invasion. The Red Army's victory in the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943 proved to be a turning point in the war. The Soviet Union emerged from World War II as a superpower, its military might and global influence undeniable. The aftermath of World War II saw the emergence of two superpowers with vastly different ideologies, the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. The rivalry between these two nations, known as the Cold War, would dominate global politics for decades to come. It was a clash of ideologies, a battle for hearts and minds, and a struggle for global dominance. The Cold War was characterized by an arms race, proxy wars, and constant ideological struggle. The Soviet Union, under Stalin's leadership, sought to expand its influence in Eastern Europe, establishing communist regimes in countries like Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. This expansion alarmed the West, leading to the formation of NATO, a military alliance aimed at containing Soviet expansion. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the US coast, remains the closest the world has ever come to nuclear annihilation. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and a devastating conflict was averted. Section 4: Seeds of Doubt. Cracks in the Soviet facade. While the Soviet Union projected an image of strength and stability during the Cold War, beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to appear. The country's centralized planning and command economy, while effective in achieving rapid industrialization, proved inefficient in the long run. Shortages of consumer goods, technological stagnation, and declining living standards became increasingly apparent. The suppression of dissent, while effective in maintaining control, created a climate of fear and apathy, hindering intellectual discourse and societal progress. By the 1970s, the Soviet Union was facing a multitude of challenges. The economy was stagnant, the cost of the arms race was taking its toll, and dissent was growing within the Soviet republics. The Brezhnev era, characterized by stagnation and a hardening of the Soviet system, only exacerbated the situation. The stage was set for a leader who would attempt to reform the system, albeit with unintended consequences. Section 5: Gorbachev's Gamble, Reform and Unintended Consequences. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev, a relatively young and energetic leader, came to power in the Soviet Union. Recognizing the dire state of the country, Gorbachev initiated a series of reforms known as perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness. These reforms aimed to revitalize the stagnant Soviet economy and introduce a degree of political and social liberalization. Perestroika faced resistance from entrenched interests and bureaucratic inertia. Glasnost unleashed a torrent of criticism and dissent that had been suppressed for decades. The unintended consequence of Gorbachev's reforms was a surge in nationalism and separatist movements within the Soviet republics. The Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were among the first to demand independence. Gorbachev's attempts to hold the Soviet Union together proved futile. In December 1991, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus signed an agreement dissolving the Soviet Union, marking the end of an empire. Section 6. Legacy of a superpower, the Soviet Union's enduring impact. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a momentous event that reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the world. It marked the end of the Cold War, the triumph of capitalism over communism, and the emergence of a new world order. The Soviet Union's legacy is a complex and multifaceted one. On the one hand, it left behind a legacy of repression, human rights abuses, and economic stagnation. The millions who perished under Stalin's reign serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of totalitarian regimes. On the other hand, the Soviet Union also achieved significant advancements in education, science, and technology. It launched the first satellite into space, Sputnik 1, in 1957, marking the beginning of the space race. The collapse of the Soviet Union had a profound impact on global politics, leading to the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower. The Soviet experiment, though ultimately a failure, continues to offer valuable lessons for understanding the 20th century and the forces that shape our world today.